and may now speak to any other organizers or panelists on the line. When you are ready to begin the presentation, press the Start Broadcast button on the GoToWebinar control panel to allow all attendees to hear you. This system will notify you once you begin your broadcast. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the Finding Fun in Final Report Forms webinar. My name is Jocelyn Moya and I'm a Programs Assistant for the CIP. I work alongside Colleen Muzinski and Chelsea Dennis. You can usually reach us Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Please call us or email us with any questions or concerns. We are always happy to provide program information and guidance. You can find our contact information at the end of this webinar. This is just some typical webinar information. We include this troubleshooting with every webinar we host. So if you can't hear me, turn up your volume. To ask a question, simply type it in the chat box on the right. If you get disconnected, please click on the email link again and re-enter the meeting. If you have any issues during this webinar related to the webinar, please call the CIP at 773-755-4730. A recording of this webinar will be posted tomorrow at enf.elks.org/CIP Resources. So just sit back and as I click through these slides and explain them. Here are some 2016-17 CIP updates. In 2016-17, the ENF will allocate $9.8 million to fund the CIP. Here are some highlights. The bonus continues. Every lodge in which more than 15% of its members donated to the ENF in 2015-16 will be eligible for a bonus of $500 when applying for a gratitude grant. Second, we have an increase of impact. This year saw an increase of $100,000 to the impact grant pool, which brings the total funds available for impact grants to a record $600,000. That's a lot to make a big impact in your local community. And here is just our overview of all of our grants. You should all be familiar with them by now if you are filling out a final report form. But we have the Gratitude, Beacon, Promise, Freedom, and Impact grants. All right, final report forms. Who needs them? We do, and here's why. As a 5013C organization, we have an expenditure responsibility and are required to show that all funds are spent charitably. We must obtain receipts and documentation that accurately represents how grant funds were spent. We want to know how the project went. We want to know what worked for your lodge and what didn't, and we want to share these ideas with your fellow lodges. These final report forms help the CIP grow, get better, and demonstrate program results. Lastly, fame. We use these forms to write stories and spread the word about the charitable works of Elks and the ENF. Here are the dates and deadlines. Final report forms will arrive as a hard copy with the grant approval and letter. All grant funds must have been used by July 31st. Lodges have from the time they receive the grant check and report until August 31st to turn in the final report form. So we're in the last month to turn in final report forms now, so hopefully you all are working on them already. And here are some typical final report form FAQs. The boxes provided on the form are small. Do I have to use them? You can feel free to attach additional documents to the final report form if needed. No worries on filling it all on the one piece of paper. My grant included multiple projects. Should I write multiple final report forms? No, please condense all project information to one single final report form and attach any additional documents if needed. However, we do require a final report form for each grant. So if you used a Promise grant with a Beacon grant, then we do require a final report form for each of those. Can I email or fax my report in? Unfortunately, no, you cannot. We receive thousands of final report forms, so we need them mailed in. I've lost my form. Where can I find a new one? You can find a new one available online. Well, first it comes with the check when it is sent out, but you can find a fillable PDF version under Resources, then final report form on the newly updated CIP website. or on each individual grant webpage. As you see here, that's where it's shown, and you just go to enf.elks.org/CIP Resources and click on Final Report Forms. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. All right, now for the basics. Contact information is one of the most important parts of this form. I know it seems pretty self-explanatory, but it is very important for us. We'll use this section in case we need any additional information or if we want to feature your lodge. Please make sure all contact information is up to date. This should be the person who fills out the form and is the most knowledgeable of the project. We do primarily use email address, so please ensure that an accurate email address is there. Grant logistics. This is the next section. We know you may not have exact numbers, but these statistics help us gain an idea of your lodge community and the scope of the event. Plus, we get to use the data to evaluate our grant program and determine where we can make improvements and provide better guidance. Date of grant use. If your lodge's grant activity occurred on multiple dates, be sure to include them all. Total dollars spent. Make sure that this number reflects the total grant activity budget. If you notice that this number is less than the total amount granted to the lodge, don't panic. Simply give us a call and we'll work with your lodge to ensure the full amount is accounted for. Next are expenses. Here we're just looking for basic information. What did the lodge use the funds on? All expenses should match what was approved on the application. Be sure the expenses total at least the amount given to the lodge. Attach documentation of how the funds were spent. This means receipts, invoices, copies of checks, thank you letters, etc. If you are returning any grant funds, send a check with the final report form and note grant refund in the memo line. If you have multiple grants, please be sure to notate which grant it is for. Also, please know that this year the Promise Grant is now worth $2,500 and gratitude grants can be worth either $2,000 or $2,500. This is important to look out for on your final report form as these are small changes. Project description. So we're just looking for your lodge to describe your lodge's grant activity. Give a good review of the project. Be as clear as possible. Include basic details, who, what, where, when, and why. Reference the approved application. We rely on this question as a narrative for your lodge's grant activity. You're the boots on the ground, so without an accurate and detailed account, we have no way of knowing how successful your lodge's project was. Make sure the final report form clearly matches your lodge's original application as well. What local need was met? What charitable need did the lodge fulfill? Please be sure the project description mirrors what was applied for. We're not looking for a down the last person or penny account, but it should be clear it's the same project and that this is the same charitable need that has been focused on. Planning and activities. Please explain how Elks were involved. This question is most important for Beacon grants and Promise grants. These two grants cannot be used for donations and must have ELK involvement. We will follow up if this information is not clearly stated on the form. So Beacon grants require ELK involvement. Make sure it's answered very thoroughly. Promise grants require involvement with youth. Gratitude grants don't require involvement, but if ELKs were involved, we'd love to hear about that. That just makes for a stronger application and project. We mostly feature projects that ELKs were actively involved in, so the more information you can provide, the better. Now on to feedback and evaluation. What were the project's successes? Here we're looking for statistics, stories, and quotes. Provide as much detail as possible. Anecdotes and data go a long way to show impact. Brag about your lodge's project. This section is a chance for your lodge to illustrate the good work you do in the community and how this grant activity specifically helped those in need. Focus on the good and the not so good. What were any mishaps? How will this shape the project in the future? This section continued. How did the lodge react to the project? What feedback did you receive? What feedback did you receive from lodge members and the community? Ask for feedback from the people you are serving and from your volunteers. Did members who don't usually participate join in? Tell us. Attachments. Receipts are very important. We need itemized receipts showing how the full amount of grant funds were used. Reports without financial documentation will be considered incomplete, and the lodge will be out of compliance until the necessary documentation is submitted. Receipts. Include the best form of receipt you can for those particular purchases. A copy of a check written to a member is not sufficient because it does not show how the funds were actually spent. Receipt examples include store receipts, purchase orders, copies of checks, and receipts with the dollar amount from partner organizations. We will not accept account summaries, pictures of check presentations, expense sheets, or lodge vouchers, credit card statements, or quick reports. Publicity. Attach newspaper articles, lodge newsletter recognition from partner organizations, thank you notes from community members, and more. Show us how the community responded to the project. Think about ways you can publicize your lodge's grant activity beyond newsletters only other Elks will read. You can also send us links to online news articles, radio, and TV spots. Send those links to lodgegrants@elks.org. We feature these links on our website as well as on the elks.org homepage. Attachments continued. Photos. We love photos. Photos catch people's attention and really help us publicize grant projects. Take photos whenever possible. We realize that sometimes circumstances prevent you from taking photos. Take photos of Elks in Action instead, Elks teaching classes or packing food baskets or delivering supplies to help to show your lodge members building stronger communities. Action shots in general are best. Close-up photos tell a better story. Please email all photos. Digital photos are preferred, and at this point, most photos we feature are either emailed to us or sent via disk or flash drive. Printed out photos are nice for us to see, but are a little bit more difficult to share with the rest of Elkdom. Furthermore, quality photos are one of the most important things we look for when deciding to feature a lodge's project on our website. Without photos, it's hard to feature. Here we have a picture of our Elks in Action Instagram account. We feature a lot of photos from lodges across the country here. So many cute photos and great Elks in Action opportunities. And then ENF Publicity Opportunities. This is part of finding the fun in the final report form. We get to learn about your grant project and we get to share it with others. We feature it almost everywhere. Our annual report, quarterly newsletter Heartbeat, convention materials, ENF Board of Trustees updates, testimonials, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter posts, ENF blog, Elks in Action, and our new CIP field guide. We also get some features in the magazine, but unfortunately we are not in charge of that, so we can't publish in there as much as we'd maybe like to. And then here's just an example of some of our publicity opportunities. This is a story from Elks in Action about a freedom grant from Tampa, Florida, Lodge number 708. There are some great things about this that I will highlight. One is the photos. Photos, photos, photos. I cannot say that enough. Great photos of the Elks in Action. Second, it is a year-round activity. It doesn't just occur once, it occurs multiple times throughout the year, and it's ongoing. Last, there's a strong charitable focus and a focus on the population in need. Here they're working with a transitional living facility for veterans in need. So these are veterans that are suffering from homelessness or are just in, need of some assistance. And then here's another Elks in Action story. This is about a promise grant from Winter Haven, Florida. This one clearly demonstrates the community in need. These children were hungry or missing school supplies, and so the Elks saw an opportunity to create a food pantry at the school each Friday. There's a clear description of the project and how it benefited the people it served. This final report form had all the details and lots of great examples of how the lodge helped the community. Last, but of course not least, photos. They have some really great photos helping these students and seeing the Elks involved in this project. Next is our Facebook page. We like to feature lodges all the time on Facebook. Strong projects with the committed volunteers are really what we're looking for, and you guessed it, photos. These projects all had great photos. Plus, we'll spread the word that you're spreading the word. We love to see lodges featured locally, and when we do, we'd like to feature you. Just like the Ashland Elks Lodge 944, they were featured in their local daily newspaper, and we featured it on our Facebook page. Publicize. This is really important too. It's also the fun of the final report form. Once your lodge's grant project is approved, spread the word. And here are some tips on how to do so. Before and after the event, spread the word about your project. No one's going to know what you're doing if you don't tell them about it. Use your lodge's newsletter, its Facebook page, its Twitter account, the community bulletin board, or an email list to inform the public. Invite Elks scholars to join. They're the next generation of Elks, and without them, you know, that's who we're looking for here. So, photos, of course, as I've hammered into you many times. I hope you're not tired of hearing it yet. Photos. We really like photos, digital photos emailed to us or sent via discs or flash drives are what we're looking for. Get feedback from people and write it down. We're looking for stories and quotes and great examples of how your lodge really helped the community and what the community had to say about it. After the event, use our news release generator. This will create a professional looking news release that you can send to your local papers. All of these resources can be found at our CIP Resources page, enf.elks.org/CIP Resources. And here, lastly, are some CIP tips for the road. First, get the report in early. The sooner you're able to, the better. Hundreds and hundreds of final report forms arrive to our office right before and on the deadline. The quantity received during this time means that some good projects could be overlooked for highlights. If you're proud of your project, get the report in early so we can feature it. Copies of receipts are best. Things get lost in the mail all of the time. The amount of time that someone says they sent something in and we never received it really happens more often than you would think. So keep copies, send in the copies, you keep the originals. Be sure your final report form clearly details your project. We use final report forms when reviewing grant applications, so be sure the information on the form accurately reflects the project. This can prevent questions in the future and help future applications be approved quicker. Please, no folders or binders. We just throw these out and they just create bulk and we can't file them. So please send them in either stapled or paper clipped or with a binder clip instead. Look out for a final report form confirmation email. When the final report form is approved and closed, we will send a confirmation email to the primary contact listed on the grant application. If there is an issue with the final report form, we will contact the person listed on the final report form for more information or documentation. Information on other charitable projects is nice, but not necessary to include. We love to see examples of how Elks impact their community, but the final report form is not the best place for this. This can get confusing and hold up your lodge's final report form. Consider emailing us these examples instead. You can plan a pretty picnic, but you can't predict the weather. We understand that unexpected things happen, cancellations, low turnout, failed partnerships, rescheduling due to weather, etc. No problem. Just contact us if something changes or if the lodge has grant funds remaining, and we'll work with you to figure out what the best solution for you is. Additionally, including details about grant project successes and shortcomings are always helpful. Don't be afraid to tell us exactly how the project went and what the lodge plans on doing differently next year. We're not going to get angry. It shows your lodge takes risks and cares about the community. All right, so then this is just a snapshot of our CIP resources. If you visit, as I've said before, enf.elks.org/CIP resources, you'll see all of these. We have our CIP program toolkit, some FAQs, the calendar, news release generator, final report forms. That's where you can click there and find all our final report forms, webinars, the CIP participation report, and then the Lodge Grants Beginner Guide. And here's just a quick overview of our webinars. We have a few scheduled up until January. These are subject to change, but should be around those times. If you have questions or need any guidance, contact us. We'll be happy to turn your idea into a great project. You can contact us via the phone at 773-755-4730 or at lodgegrants@elks.org. And then I will look to see if we have any questions before I finish up. So I have a question about the final report forms and if they're ones available online are fillable, and they are fillable if you have an up-to-date version of Adobe. I'm not sure about saving them in between, but you can definitely print them out later. You should be able to save them if you save them as a different document. So, all right. Well, it was great hosting a webinar for you today, and if you have any questions, as usual, please feel free to contact us.